Okay, welcome everybody, thank you for coming. It's a pleasure to introduce Steffen, who's in migration between Perth and Melbourne at the moment, and has just recently started a new position at Curtin University as Head of Design, is that correct?
Nope, Professor of Design Art.
Professor of Design Art at Curtin, and previously you were at RMIT and you ran Games Lab.
Yeah, the G-Lab. Mm-hmm.
G-Lab, which was internationally famous, I think it's fair to say. So it's a great pleasure to welcome Steffen and say thank you so much for coming to talk to us today.
Thanks.
I'll hand it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for saving my box top on the car. Earlier today, I was just about to go into the managed parking garage and it's like, no, don't do that. So lucky me here. So today is a special occasion for me because it's my first talk that I'm giving sort of under the Curtin banner. No more RMIT. I've got rid of all the red here, as you can see. It's black and white. I start off where I, in a way, started many years ago. The last time I had a black and white presentation was for my PhD presentation, so I thought that was quite fitting. What I'm going to talk about today is, in a way, a retrospective, very quick one of 3 projects that came about in the context of the G-Lab, Games and Experimental Entertainment Laboratory at RMIT, that I ran between 11 and just up until recently, 2 months ago. And a new project that I just wanted to give to you as a sort of, I guess, little provocation, I suppose. So after the Games Before Play, I have been doing and conducting a lot of research around the use of games in contexts other than games, I guess, towards objectives of health and well-being, mobility in the city, all kinds of stuff. And I personally, and that is nothing to say about the status of the world or whatever, I've become a little bored of the game question, to be honest, because I think we've done a couple of things that are interesting, and I think that when you talk about games and you try to put them into different contexts, then of course there's always a systemic clash, right, between the system of a game versus the system that you try to mix and mingle this with, and that can cause tensions, I guess. And at the same time, I also had a bit of a soul search, and I realized that my real interest is in play. Now we could get very definitorial and say, play is, games are play with rules or whatever, but it really doesn't matter to me because I like music, I like playing music, I like playing board games, I like play all over the place in very different contexts, theatrical, performance, whatever. And so that's real, I guess, for the time being, if anything. So that is probably my interest, because people, of course, come now and say, "What are you doing, Steffen? What's the new thing?" And I was like, I don't know yet. I want to find out. I want to give myself the time to find out what it is that I think is probably a good lens. Anyhow, after the Games Before Play is a bit of a pun on a very famous saying in Germany, so I come from Germany originally, by a football coach, and we're talking real football, right? No, just saying, just in case you're wondering. By a coach by the name of Sepp Herberger, who won the 1954 World Championships, which was a drastic cultural interception, you could say, in the German culture after World War II, and so lots of studies have been done in this, and I was quite interested at the time what the role of football can be, even in terms of perception and of such a team, to change a whole cultural attitude towards, work ethics and reinventing yourself and all that. So Sepp Herberger is very famous for having said, after the game is before the game. And because of myself and my transitioning, as John said, I'm thinking at the moment after games before play. So what does that mean? We'll see. As I've mentioned, I have I've founded and led the G-Lab at RMIT, which is on hiatus, you could say, at the moment. I've been working for, web agencies, and worked as an artist and touring musician when I was slimmer back in the day. and all kinds of other things. And just in terms if you're interested in my background, study-wise, done a bit of cultural anthropology and rhetoric, and my doctorate is in computer-aided architectural design, which is kind of a weird combination. Yeah, just how it is. Yeah, so I thought also really funny playful and gamefulness, maybe playfulness. So different things that we've been doing in the past couple of years, and here are sort of, I guess, do I want to say outstanding? Maybe not, but to me they're emblematic and they're very recent projects. I think this is why I've chosen them. So approach one to what we had been calling gamefulness, as in using game design methods to apply them to, I guess, challenges. Challenges that we had been considering to be of a wider scope. One being, or an answer being, this commercial game. This game has just been released for iOS and for Android last month, end of last month. So it's brand new. You need to speak German in order to play in it. I'm very sorry for that. There might be an English version, and what this game does is called Mission Schweinehund, Mission Pighound. Pighound is a sort of iconographic figure in German culture again, where you basically address yourself by thinking of yourself as there's this creature, the pighound, and the pighound is lazy and never gets here going, and so you're trying to get fitter by overcoming the pighound in this game, the antagonist, of course. And we built this game with a commercial partner, Novartis Pharma, world's largest pharmaceutical company, in this case the German subsidiary, and the G-Lab served as the principal research partner. This was a 3-year-long project. What we really did here was we did user studies with people in Germany, in Finland, in Australia. And by people, I mean people who are close to or already afflicted with so-called lifestyle diseases. Under lifestyle diseases, we can subsume diabetes type 2, COPD, cardiovascular disease, diseases that come with, along typically with people spending too much time sitting in front of the computer and not being physically active. That's how it is. There is a price for all we do. And, but that's not just the, of course, sole, I guess, way of how this exhibits. But what we know is that in Western societies and in societies eating too fattily and not being physically active enough, this is costing us enormous amounts of money, right? And you probably, everyone here in this room has someone in the family or knows someone who's got diabetes. And my parents, for example, both of them passed away and they had diabetes. And then when you have diabetes, you're very likely to attract these comorbidities, as the sports medical guys and the medical guys call them. So just to talk a little bit about this, what we know is that these chronic illnesses, or that become chronic, where the median, the average age to afflict them, is 40. I'm 42. So also this average age, and we're becoming younger and younger, afflicting these types of diseases. And Novartis came to us and said, can we build a game that will make people more physically active? Because there's the Wii Fit and there's these devices, there's sports games out there. And so we started, based on these figures, to interrogate and develop prototypes and develop a design portfolio of solutions. We spoke to people. We worked very closely with the University of Basel Sport Medical Department. And ultimately, we came up after a longer while. This was one of the key studies that we found that the Wii Fit, when played towards making people more physically active, worked. There's a likelihood that this can help people who are in that spot. What we came up with after 3 years is basically something that I can show you quickly here on the phone. Now this is going to be experimental. Oh, it's gone. Yeah, it was here. Did I pack it up? So whilst I am talking, no, what I'll do is I'll show you a prototype movie. That way we can circumvene that. Sorry, wrong. Yeah. So maybe interesting also in terms of iterative design is what happened from this stage of the game where there was no commercial game developer yet involved, right? Up until the release, and this is circa July 2014, the stage. And at that stage, the game was called Olden, as in pun to Walden, you know, living away in a nice forest hut, I suppose, where Mr. Olden here is your companion. The basic idea is there is a village and it's been deserted, and it used to have all these really awesome villages, and they are now living elsewhere, and they all, you know, are sort of, it's quite a satirical take on all that. They're eating too fattily. There's the penguin who only eats fat fish, and there's the bear who smokes heavily and all that. And you have to bring them back. And how do you bring them back? You have to be physically active. So we're measuring the activity with the sensors and the actuators in the smartphone. So it's clearly a mobile game, but there is no need for an extra device. And what we also did is we developed technology using just the camera for motion capturing exercises in front of the phone. And thirdly, we let people customize the game to their fitness level. So that's something that is in that combination quite unique, because typically you hear things like, oh, you need to walk 10,000 steps. Of course, that is not true for someone who is, you know, massively obese. Because then relative to that weight and to the fitness level, which is not just about how many steps can I walk, but it's also, there's different types of tests that we have all implemented in the game, into the game. You are fit to a certain extent, and then you're relatively fit to that extent when you start doing something, right? So 10 steps can be quite a lot for someone who's maybe not very active at all. So in that combination, customization, motion tracking and capturing of the fitness exercises specifically developed by sports medical guys for this target audience, based and integrated into gameplay that makes sense. So what you do for exercising in the game is you garden. You do gardening. You pump and you cut the tree, and then you grow fruit. And that fruit attracts the animals to come back, but you can also bribe them to come back. Well, that's something, I don't want to spoil your gameplay here. So there's a couple of quite sort of things that were, because people, what we've got as feedback from user testing this was basically people said, first of all, we don't want to be portrayed as slim and physically fit people or characters, avatars, whatever, because that's not how it is. Let's not lie. And the second major thing was, can we also have something that's sort of like a, you know, like a side thing? It's like, yeah, fat, silly, penguin, all that sort of ironic comments, and that was well graded. So that's the status there. Did we find the connector?
I think you might have put it in your...
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I should have. Maybe you have a look. Oh, is this it?
That's
it. Sorry, because I have one too. I didn't try to steal it, which is the VGA. Oh. Good. So just in comparison, interesting probably for, oops. So this is how, I'm not going to start the cheating version. There you go.
Out of the projector.
Well,
Still great.
that's better than nothing, I would say. So, as you see, the graphics are way cleaner, and there is a knowledge database there. You've got to discover and unveil sort of the entire terrain, which is right now clouded. You've got to overcome the Schweinehund, this guy here, is sleeping, and for that, of course, you have to exercise and do all kinds of things. So, and I think right now my quest list, let me just, this is a super challenge. I have to construct a lever to push the pig hound away from the path. And if I do this now, I'll have to start walking, which is one of the customization tests, the 6-minute walking test, where we basically measure, and it's a standard sports medical test, where we measure how many steps can you take within 6 minutes, right? So as you can see, we really try to make it so that we make most of the sensors and the actuators that are built into this thing, and you make most of the co-processing power and all that. And well, if I would start it, now we'll say, you know, of course, I can't detect the signal, etc. Maybe, yeah, start walking. Yeah, go outside for this exercise so you've got good GPS coverage. And yeah, and all kinds of stuff that's happening here. Let me just double check here I'm trying to, here we go. This is the, sorry, there's an expert mode, of course. So also one of the things that was quite important to us was how do we make it so that ultimately someone who is a medical expert can get information out of this, right? So that's still in and of itself a challenge, as it is for many people who are working towards medical devices, because you have to have clearance from a certain point on with the FDA typically in the US, right? Because they are overshadowing everything like they do. Yeah, so that's a first example of stuff that we've been working on. I'll just got to find my Prezo. Probably still open, let's see. No. So a second approach and example is as a student, PhD student, Sven Kromer, and the GLab had been, or still has been is being sponsored by Audi Electronics Venture, a 100% daughter of Audi in Germany. And one of the big questions that we have been asking also in the context of gamefulness and using games and game design towards, I guess, creating enjoyable routes in ways towards an outer objective, I suppose, was the question, what happens if we have autonomous driving all around and people will be bored whilst they are stuck in the commute? Because they have to still do the commute. Of course, there's many different answers to that question, like, you know, cycle, or well, where's the cycle routes for that? Maybe on the PN Highway. Good luck. First day I got my bike here in Melbourne, I had an accident. First day. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna bike to RMIT, it'll be great from Bayside. And nah, never happened. St Kilda Road, I think one of the worst roads in the world for for bike accidents. I think has the highest frequency of bike accidents in all of Australia, and in the Southern Hemisphere, I think it's number 3. Just saying, in case. Like, of course, keep on cycling. But that is not a justification for driving a car in Melbourne, of course, and wherever. However, we were quite fascinated with the design space of the car and what it offers as a space and a time and a context to design for different experiences, enjoyable experiences. So Sven has been working towards this, and he's named this now Auto Play, and we're about to release a couple of videos that show 3 approaches to this. One, a gym thing called Auto Gym that's built into the car, where you basically pedal along, and we're using contextual data to influence the pedaling. Speed can create resistance and all that kind of stuff. And you have to prognose how long you will be standing at the traffic light and all that. Quite interesting approach to of course, take advantage of the specific situation and the specific parameters that come with that. Then there's a second project called Auto Jam, where Sven has built a car steering wheel cover with sensors, and you tap along a beat from your favorite song. You try to match it, and the pace of the song changes with the context again, with contextual data. And the third project that he's working on is called Auto Quiz, and all of this is based on running user studies with commuters in Melbourne. All of this is based on a couple of findings, one of them being that, of course, people who commute have a tendency to drive the same routes or quite similar routes back and forth again. And so we said, how can we make this more exciting for them, right? So there's a couple things that you will learn, such as you have a tendency to run into the same pool of people again and again, but you will not notice. And there's studies before that show how it is if people meet one another, and there's sort of even a counter for that and all that. Oskar Julin in Sweden has worked around this kind of stuff. What we're doing is we basically have built a location-based quiz, which is sort of, maybe banal, but it's kind of interesting. Sort of, if it's always the same route, what can you do with that? And there is quizzing all around that, all kinds of quiz mechanics that you can use. So these are the three small projects. And if you go onto YouTube and you look for autoplay, there's a couple of videos already there, but there will be sort of a major thing that we're shooting beginning of next month. The third approach is something that I have created myself called Future Deck. And a Future Deck is a card game. And in that, which is a classical thing to do if you prototype, regardless of whether you're doing game design or you're doing design stuff. And yes, there is a couple of, let's say, similar card sets and things out there. My story with this deck is that around a year ago, I was invited by Deloitte here in Australia to run a workshop all around the idea of gamefulness and how this can influence business and will influence the future. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, yet another boring presentation. That's not really how you should be working, Steffen. It's no good. And I thought, and then I read the study that Deloitte had just released called Building the Lucky Country, where they show growth markets, right, that are expected to create, value, as in profit, but also maybe jobs. Now, all that in itself we could discuss and argue if this is the right angle and if growth markets in and of themselves are, the future per se, blah, blah, blah. I found this quite fascinating, so I thought just to myself, hey, wouldn't this, and I should mention the third factor. I read a book by a colleague at the University of St. Gallen's Executive School, a quite famous business school in Switzerland, or all of Europe really, Jens Meyer, and he's been writing about convergence. And he said, what's quite observable and really interesting is that with the ubiquity of computing and the networks that come with that, classical businesses are merging in really awkward ways, right? So you could think of Uber as a thing where there's a taxi business, but then there's the prevalence of knowing where people are, and this knowledge, a technology plus a very classical thing, all of a sudden creates a new thing, right? So everyone's like, might be thinking, not everyone, but people might think, it's just brand new, but it's not really brand new. It's just a bit of a puzzle piecing together, Lego, right? It's Lego juggling in a way. So based on this thought, I created this game here. Oh, it's not a game. It's, I'd say, a set of cards to tell stories from the future. That's the tagline. Sorry. Where each of these green cards represents one of the growth markets. I'll give you a couple of examples. Residential aged care, preventative health and fitness. I invented a couple of growth cards. Personal growth, I thought that was quite fitting. Yes, I'm an academic, how can't help it. Wealth management, next-gen solar, parcel delivery, all these are supposed to, create new stuff. Gas transport, who would have guessed? International education, ha ha ha. So alongside that, I then thought, how can I make this so that it's becoming a little interesting thing? And I thought, first of all, it would be nice to have an objective. If you want to use this to create stuff. So I'll let John draw a card. One, please. Yep. Oh, please, you read, of course. Don't be so.
Absolute world domination.
Yeah. Very good. Keep that card.
That's the sensiLab tagline.
Perfect.
Very good. Then we're going to draw 2 of these cards here. These are the growth cards. We're going to create something that will establish absolute world domination. 1, please. And you 1. Okay. Read them aloud to the group, please.
Preventative health and wellness.
And you?
Private schooling.
Okay. Let's mix this together and let's come up with something that is so strong that it creates domination. Maybe we'll use a technology for that. So I've got a couple of key technologies here, the blue cards. You know, robots and autonomous vehicles and your technology ideas. I've got a couple of cards, and I always invite people to create their own ideas for tech and for growth and all that. So we'll use technology as a binder, as a putty of sorts, to create something. Please.
Your technology idea.
Oh, you've got to come up with technology. Sorry, mate. Sorry, mate.
Come up with a technology idea.
So preventative health and fitness plus private schooling and a tech.
Let's end at world domination.
Yes.
Go on, Dilpreet.
Yeah, no pressure. Well, what did we have? Private schooling.
Private schooling and health, preventative health and well-being, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Don't try to come up with something that is, just think of something. Whatever it is. Can be drones or little micro thingies or whatever.
Artificial intelligence.
Aha, good. Okay, some kind of AI, schooling, and health and fitness. I've got a couple ideas for that. Yes, I do. But you should. Do you want to try? Give it a try?
An AI that teaches a private school that actually brainwashes people into an army that's really fit and takes over the world.
Yes, very good.
You're the man.
You're the man, mate. Very good. Now, of course, that will be impacted by an impact. So you've got to defend your idea in this way of playing with the cards. So there's different rule sets, and I always invite people to come up with their own rules, right? Something I do in workshops and all that. Because ultimately you need to make it a game of yourself and for your own purposes. So oftentimes I also ask people to bring their own assets and all that. Yeah. So let's impact your idea.
Oh, here we go. Disruption.
Yeah, that's quite generic.
It is.
Let's have another one.
Utopia.
Your army is not going to overrun the world. They will create peace.
Yeah, okay. That sounds alright too.
And it will be a very fit world. And whoever doesn't play along can go. Okay, there is a couple of, thank you very much. You know, there's Armageddon and alcohol and marijuana and zombies and the impacts and all that. So ultimately, if you are stuck with this, oh sorry, I'm not yet in the stuck part, but one of the major questions that drove me when I created this was not so much into the question of growth per se, but into the question of how this is ethical. Because I'm a hippie. Yeah, an academic. So mate, let's draw one of the ethics cards here and let's check upon this utopia that we've created. If it is...
Your values idea.
Oh, this is you. You've got a tendency, my friends, to choose one of the cards where you have to create a value.
Wait, I'll pick it.
Yes, please.
I don't think there's any.
It's sustainable.
Is it sustainable? Is what we've just created sustainable? Does it have to
Well,
be
if it's a
sustainable?
utopia, you'd hope.
Yeah.
It's true.
All utopias crash, and all utopias always exhibit, really what they show, if you look at it historically, is a counter image of the current social and political context. That's what utopias are really telling us. So yeah, so that's the future deck. And then, yeah, if you're getting stuck, then here's superpowers like swap cards or immortality or telekinesis, time travel, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so now really ultimately I want to send you off in a way with, again, let me remind you of the after the game is before play, something that I have been discovering in myself, and maybe this is a true research interest of mine, that I'm so interested in mischievous stuff. And I think this sits in a much broader context of us being at a time where we are assuming that we have to be online 24/7, that we want technology to work, or we are being told that it should be working. What is really happening is that we're working against technology. I don't know if you've noticed, right? Every morning I wake up, there's 10, 15 upgrades. I have to, print out the cards. So ultimately, and there's a lot of studies that show that we're investing more and more time into running these systems that should be running on our behalf. So I've been thinking about how to break technology and how to make it so that it doesn't really do what it should be doing. It could, for example, swear. It could just not at all do what you're telling it to do. You're still assuming, and it's probably even telling you that it is doing what you want it to do. So there's lots of things that are coming with that, and I think that through this lens you can also criticize the surveillance qualities of technology that come about, criticize the ways that we're expected to function in these algorithmic days. And yeah, maybe this is a nice thing. So my first project that I'm working on at Curtin, and you're going to be the first ones to know, is called Kissel Drone. And Kissel Drone is a drone that carries a mistletoe, and it has a little speaker, and you can hoover it on top of people. And yes, of course, this is not allowed by whoever, authorities, but I don't care. And it'll ask people to kiss. You can kiss now. So, yeah, thank you.
Great, thank you. So does anyone have any questions?
I'm curious about this particular outcome here. What effect does it have on romance if you have a drone that goes on top of someone?
Well, there's a couple answers to that. I haven't tried this yet with people. But what I can tell you is this. If you look up the history of the mistletoe and mistletoe kissing, then you will find that actually it was used almost as a brute force sort of approach to have people kiss, particularly women, to force them into kissing. So it's not it doesn't come without its burden, that tradition. And but that's not really specifically what I want to point to with this one. I think I'm very fascinated with this one because, there's a lot of ironicizing about there's a drone for that, drone for babysitting, drone for, serving the drinks and all that. And I also am fascinated with, again, I think this tension that technology starts to force us to do things, and I don't think that's right. And there's a variety of projects that are in that spot in the design space up there, I guess. And, yeah, and I think it's mischievous. Yeah, we'll see what people say. I don't think, look, if I look at it from an academic and university standpoint, no one will clear this ethics-wise, clearly, so no chance. So I might need to inscenate and shoot a video and then put it online and see what people say, what they think of that. I think this is clearly the approach. But I would love to test it. And I've got all the components already, so quite close. Yeah, because you need a speaker, you need a drone, and mistletoe. Right, Bluetooth speaker, that's it, thank you. But for example, there's another one that I've been thinking about, which is, you know, the carrot and the stick, right? I mean really concretely, not the carrot and the stick where the stick is sort of it's either or, but the carrot and the stick where someone has a stick and there's a carrot dangling in front of the animal. And I've been thinking of mounting a cell phone directly in front of myself and then walking around, which would, on one hand, resolve the problem that you have to touch it all the time, because if you watch people, in traffic, there's many accidents that are being caused by people just not being observant. And yes, of course, there will be brain implants and whatever types of implants that reduce the need for having a real device in your hands anyways. But I thought that was kind of funny because I also thought it was quite a carrot there. So, that kind of stuff.
Recently someone has come up, I think they're selling it, this thing called a periscope for your phone that basically puts a periscope mirror on the back of your camera.
Yep.
So you can be sitting with it in front of you and see that you're not going to run
It's quite, I think it's even 2 years old. It's not that new anymore. I've been looking at, actually what got me started is my observation that people stare at the phone whilst they cross traffic. And I looked up the figures, and these are rapidly growing numbers that you see there, where people are causing either accidents or they get injured, or they die. So I was thinking, what's the solution to that, right? Other than just saying, oh, implant. Yeah, what's the solution to knowing that, for example, it could be a sensor that would tell you, you're getting too close to something, like a car sensor, when your parking sensor. But I was like, nah, I don't like that. I'd rather like something that you can sort of move back and forth like a visa of sorts. Anyways, just me. Yeah. Please.
I'm really interested in the idea of the ethical design. So who do you think you need to play this kind of game with? Who are the people that need to be thinking about ethics and design and data?
Everyone needs to think about ethics. We need to think about ethics all the time. Designers need to think about ethics. People who create businesses need to think about ethics. For example, I'll give you an example. Whilst I was doing research for this one, I came across a study that tries to figure out if the fact that we'll have more and more technologies around us will create more jobs. And it does not, they say. Less and less. Where you could argue, well, it creates more leisure time, but if you look into the sociology of technology, we'll find, as I've mentioned earlier, we have less and less time with more and more technology. That concerns me deeply. So I'm thinking whoever creates something should be really thinking about the consequences other than the profit that has on not just himself or herself, but onto the people he or her employs, the people who use the knowledge and that technology or that product and all that. And I want to instigate that in people. There's not, I think in the days to come, I think we need to always ask these questions. And then you could always argue, well, they're going to stand in the way because, we just want to make something and that'll do, right? Whereas this is quite a systemic approach in a way, and it can be a barring element, like, I can't go there, constrained, too early on probably in the sort of coming up with ideas phase. That's why if I run workshops on sort of product ideation, that I play this at the very end. Sometimes, no. Well, you could if you wanted to, but I've realized that to do this in the very beginning, it takes away that mischievous sort of mindset, because everyone goes like, yeah. I'll give you a very good example, I think, of a situation where the card created a new product. We drew the TV show card, so create a TV show. Then maritime resources, whatever it's called, and then the retirement aging or something, housing. And then we came up with, or this group came up with an idea of a Big Brother-like show that takes place on a ship, and the technology was biochips. Takes place on the ship, and all the people on the ship are seniors, elderly citizens. They are all terminally ill, and the last person standing and surviving on the ship, because there's sparse resources, only the stuff that you can fish. There's a luxury cabin, of course, but you can only get in there if you do whatever, score the most votes or whatever. And whoever survives will be healed by this biochips, right? So, and people were like, "Oh my God, this is so evil!" Right. Well, the ethics card that we drew was basically, how can you make this? How can you create compassion? And then we said, well, it turns out that all these people on the ship were actors, and they were doing a show to campaign and remind us of how it is to age in this kind of society, where it's all about the spectacle. I found that quite impressive.
Yes.
And I remember the faces when we
Yes.
presented it, because everyone's in shock, right? Like, I remember the person who organized this is like, "Oh God, I brought this person here. This is like, I'm so embarrassed." It's like, cha-ching, here we go. That was good. Yeah, that was quite good. Yep.
Another question? I'm just interested in the iterations of design for the cards. How long did you just? Was it easy? Was there multiple iterations? Was it?
I have the core of, I would say there was one major iteration where I came up with the objectives, because they didn't exist before that. There was, not really. And then I played I ran a couple of workshops, and then I realized there must be something that people play against, and it must be something fun. So typically in the end, if band song idea, people have to perform a song. Or if they have a party theme, they have to run a party for us, right? And that kind of thing. So that's quintessential, I think, to have something that's a good objective, that's good to play against. And then I also replaced, I had something else here and I can't quite remember. I put up the superpower cards because I realized that people would get stuck, and I wanted them to have a cathartic moment and go release and say, whatever, let's drop it, right? And not get paralyzed. People have a tendency to get paralyzed. You go like, no, don't, shake, be relaxed and all that. And but that's it really. The ethics cards were there from the get-go. That was, to me, the growth plus technology plus ethics plus impacts. That's the core of the thing. Yep.
Has there been any really crazy rules that
People have come up with.
that have just completely changed the
Yes.
nature of...
Combat.
Okay.
With an umpire and two groups combating over an idea. Really discourse debate club style. Very cool. And I've start to, well, if I ever have the time, I would love to have a database of like rules and ideas where people can say this is great and stuff. Yeah, and I'm trying to offer this more as a workshop, and time allowing.
Does everybody get competitive? Like,
A little bit, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and also what I have been realizing is when I say mischievous, that's good and that's me, but the game has, because it's probably built very close to reality in a way, or it's not trying to simulate reality, right, but just to challenge and be a little silly, I guess. Because that's what I'd like to achieve, is people go silly and then all of a sudden they realize, if we do this, then this happens, right, something like that. But this sort of tool set has a tendency to evoke darker thoughts, darker play. But then at the same time, I also know from the literature that dark play hasn't been really looked at and really thoroughly investigated. And it is equally existing next to whatever we think is fun. Because fun, it might be fun for someone to whip someone else. If we want that, or if that's something that society, supports, up to a certain point, whatever. But, you know, I don't know. Well, probably should. But as I said, dark play, and that sort of evoking that in a way, yeah, I think that's good.
Cards Against Humanity has been great.
Yes,
for that.
of course.
Yeah.
Get great stuff for that. And not everyone agrees. Some people think it's politically incorrect as hell. Yeah, I don't want to comment on that. It's a bestseller, so there must be something there. Yeah, there's a couple of there's a couple of card tools that are used, of course, for scenario building, right? There's the Thing from the Future, I think, with Stuart Candy. There's Cards Against Humanity. There's the metagame. There's a St. Gallen incubator model, BMG, I think it's called. There's Doblin, a Deloitte daughter, is using a card game to sort of create new business ideas. So quite a big variety of card tools to come up with ideas. But I think mine is in itself what it is, and yeah, it brings forth oftentimes weird and silly things, but I think with that specific sort of grounding in these are real growth markets and this is real impact, and there's a couple of fantasy ones, and the question of the ethics, there's a good angle.
No more questions? Okay. Thank you so much, Steffen, for a
Pleasure.
fascinating talk. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And Jim.
Oh yeah, the cards, please. That'd be nice. Thank you.
Thank you.